I'm sitting here with a student. His name is Howard Lingard. He is a student of St. Leo University, who is a pastor of Worldwide Christian Ministry, and I have a few questions for him. All right, Howard, how did you decide that you wanted to become a pastor?
I came out of a family of a lot of pastors, and the calling was on my life. I avoided it, tried to run around and not go around it. And I answered the call. And it was a very strange call. One night I was at my house upstairs and I could hear this noise. As a matter of fact, it wasn't a noise. It was someone like it was speaking to me. So I got up and I had my bat and I went downstairs and I didn't see anyone. So I came back upstairs, and by the time I laid down, God began to speak to me. And I sat up in the middle of the bed and I began to say to God, I said, God, how can you choose me, a man that's not perfect? And he told me to get my Bible that was at the foot of the bed, and I began to read. He says, well, I want you to I want to read about Moses. I want you to know about Moses. And then I began to read about Moses and found out Moses actually killed the man. Not only Moses killed the man, he told me, well, what do you know about Noah? Noah was a drunk. And he talked about Jacob. Jacob was a liar, deceived his father, his dying father. So he says, okay, you're not in this group, but I understand what you're saying. He said, well, won't you just try me? If you just try me for a month, if it's not what you want, go back to doing what you were doing before. And I started going to church like I used to do when I was young. After about a month, I entered Faith Institute of Theology and started studying deeply of the Word of God. The more I studied, the more I wanted to study. The more I could feel the compassion that Jesus had when he was here. And I went from being a pew sitter to the choir, to associate pastor, and then subsequently to pastor. So that's where it was at.
All right, Howard. Were you raised in a Christian family?
Very much so. My uncles both were all pastors. I say all associated with the churches. I had an Uncle Frank, he was the musician. I had Uncle Al, he was a musician / pastor. Uncle Jasper was the bishop. Uncle Brant was a pastor. My father was the senior deacon of the Pentecostal district here in the state of Florida.
All right, so you were raised Pentecostal?
Definitely Pentecostal.
All right. And how old were you when you decided you wanted to become a pastor?
I was in my late 30s. I was in my late 30s when I decided I wanted to become a pastor. After so many incidents in my life, broken relationships, as far as bad accidents in the military. So I came to that point there where, you know what, this is it. This is where I feel, and I feel comfortable with it.
All right.
Really do.
Now, was it difficult to be in the military and be a man of God?
Yes, it was very difficult because now you have to balance. It says, thou shalt not kill. And that was one of the things that I struggled with. Even becoming a senior non-commissioned officer in the military and going into Iraq, how do you put your men and your women into harm's way and feel, an urge to preach or to teach or whatever like that? And as many times I spent on my knees asking God, how? And he came up with an answer for me. He says, if I didn't want you to be here, you wouldn't be here. If I didn't want you to do this, you wouldn't do that. But you got to understand, going back to Moses. Moses actually, killed and enslaved people as well. David, a lot of people. But he was a man after God's own heart. And I'm a man after God's own heart.
Right.
So I know that he's a forgiving God and almighty God.
True. True. Was it hard to resist temptation? It's
always hard to resist temptation, even today, because it says in the book of Psalms there that the flesh is weak. It don't make a difference if you're T.D. Jakes, Paula White, Joe Osteen, whomever you might be. The Bible speaks of it. And there's only one man that ever came to this earth that was infallible, and that was Jesus Christ.
Right. All right. Well, thank you, Howard, for sharing
Thank you.
your life story with us.
Hey, enjoy. God bless.
All right. Thank you, guys.